Something is not right if what was once considered going above and beyond is now considered the norm at work. What I mean by that is that you're staying up late to get work done, you're taking on more and more responsibilities, and it's not valued or it's not recognized. It's just seen as you are that person and that is what you're supposed to do. So if you're in that situation, that's why you clicked on this video. I'm going to be diving deeper on the topic of setting boundaries at work. I'm going to be sharing with you 4 strategies for you to effectively set boundaries so that you can maintain your mental health, that you can ensure work-life balance, and that you are better at prioritizing the various tasks that you need to do at work. Before we dive too deep into the topic, let's set a clear, simple definition of what is a boundary. A boundary is a limit of what a person can consider an acceptable behavior. And based on that definition, it means that boundaries differ from person to person. And even as an individual, the boundaries that you may have at certain times of your life may change as you evolve and as you grow as a person and as a professional. So boundaries are not static. They are things that can change and can be updated. But it's up to you to set the appropriate boundaries for yourself, especially when it comes to work. There are different reasons why someone may not feel too comfortable setting boundaries. If you're a person who is a people pleaser and you want to be liked, setting boundaries is not something that can be very easy for you. I have been there in my career, especially when I was starting off and I was trying to move up in my career. I felt that I always needed to prove that I could take on more or to prove that I was the one who was working the hardest. But what I realized over time is that strategy actually backfired. I remember one specific situation where I had taken on so many responsibilities that a deadline came up and I wasn't able to meet the deadline. I was organized that I knew that I just needed a couple more hours to get things done. I went to my manager, explained the situation, and instead of being like, hey, thanks for taking one for the team, you've been stepping up while other people were away or whatever. Instead, I was blamed for this thing not being done at a specific time. And so that's when I specifically can remember time at work where I was like, okay, I need to set boundaries. I need to set limits in terms of how much I'm going to take on and how much I'm going to let people into my space and my life. It can be something that's very scary to do, especially if you're someone who doesn't like conflict, you're someone who's not very comfortable with rejection. Setting boundaries can be something that can cause some level of tension, especially if you haven't been setting boundaries at work in the past and now you want to start implementing them. Other reasons why people may fear setting boundaries include missing out on opportunities. As I was saying, I had that mindset initially that if I didn't always push myself to the limit and sometimes the breaking point, that I would miss out on career advancement opportunities. And so that's one of the reasons why I chose not to set boundaries. But as I said, that strategy ended up backfiring. Sometimes you also don't want to set boundaries because you don't want to seem incompetent, and also you're looking at your colleagues and maybe they're doing the extra work in the evening or they're going to the social events, getting drunk with the boss, or they're playing the corporate game, right? And you may not necessarily want to do that, but you're looking at them and thinking, if I don't do that, I'm going to miss out on an opportunity. If I don't do that, I'm going to damage a relationship. So sometimes we kind of put ourselves in these uncomfortable situations that we don't want to be in, that are outside of our boundaries, outside of our comfort zones, but we feel that they can lead to better opportunities. Despite all the fear and all the anxiety that may come up as you're trying to set boundaries at work, there are some great benefits to actually doing it. It does help you increase your productivity. It does help you when it comes to your mental health, and it does help you when it comes to your well-being. So now let's look at the 4 strategies that can help you set boundaries at work. The first one is to set clear expectations. Once you have taken the time to identify the boundaries that you have, whether the boundaries are related to your work hours, the responsibilities that you're taking on, the kinds of events or the kinds of meetings you're going to participate in. The types of boundaries you set really depend on you and your life circumstances. But once you've taken the time to identify what are the boundaries that you need to set in this work environment, you need to ensure that you're setting the right expectations. So firstly, that means communicating your boundaries. It's great to have boundaries, but if they just stay in your mind and they just stay with you, nobody else is going to know them so that they can actually change their behavior to align with your boundary. So it's quite important that you set the expectation regarding what your boundaries are. For example, if you have boundaries regarding work hours because you're a parent and you need to finish work by 4:30 so you get there on time to pick up your child, that is a boundary that you need to set with your manager, with your employer, and communicate that effectively so they know that by 4:30 you need to clock out because there's other things you need to do to maintain your work-life balance. That's an example of how you can set clear expectations of what your boundaries are. And what happens when you do set those clear expectations is that no questions get asked. There aren't any assumptions that are being made about your schedule. You're clearly communicating what your boundaries are. What boundaries really help you do is create that mutual respect between yourself, your manager, and your employer. The second thing when it comes to setting boundaries at work is knowing your limits. You have to know yourself. You have to have a level of self-awareness to know that there are certain things that can cause you to break down, or there are certain things that can cause you to go into a stress mode or that bring a level of anxiety for you. So knowing yourself and knowing your limits is very important. And when it comes to knowing your limits, you can't compare yourself to another person. Maybe you're seeing someone who goes overboard all the time and that person is completely fine. If that's not your style, if that's not your way to operate, then you shouldn't feel a need to compete against that person because that's what they're doing. You don't know their story. You don't know where they've been. Sometimes you don't know people's trauma that's causing them to work overload. Something that I've learned over the years and even more recently is that, even something as depression can show up differently for different people. I thought that depression was always something that, feeling depressed, you're down, you're not able to do anything at all, and you kind of want to stay in your bed all the time, and that was the idea that I had of depression, until it was pointed out to me that for some people, depression is actually where they go overload, they go overboard, they're doing way too much because they're trying to silence out those thoughts in their mind. So you're looking at this person and they're working so hard and you're thinking, I'm trying to be like that person, but you don't know what they're going through. So when it comes to setting appropriate boundaries at work, it's about you realizing what your specific limits are. So this involves knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses. If you are someone who is still trying to understand the strengths that you have and the strengths that you bring to the workplace, I do have a free quiz called the Introvert at Work Quiz. You can find the link in the description, and it allows you to walk through a couple of questions that will help you identify your most marketable skills at work as an introvert. So check out the link in the description if you haven't taken that quiz. But really understanding your skills, understanding your strengths, understanding what you bring to the table, and also your weaknesses or areas of improvement. These are some of the ways that you can start setting appropriate boundaries. When it comes to your work schedule or taking necessary time during the day to recharge or to reset, those are all different ways that you're setting boundaries by really knowing your limits. And prioritizing your time is another way that you can set appropriate limits when it comes to your work, and also, if necessary, delegating appropriately, especially if you are a leader. Delegating is one of the things that you really need to know how to do effectively. You shouldn't feel that you're the only person that can do something, or you're the only person that can handle a certain responsibility. I've seen that many times happen at work, and a lot of times what I see as the problem is that either you don't trust the team that you have, or you're just giving yourself way too much credit in terms of what you're capable of doing. But I've seen this happen where a person thinks that they have to take on all the responsibility. Nothing can get done if they're not there. And then they lead themselves into burnout because they're taking on way too much, not knowing what their limits are and not setting the appropriate boundaries. So if you are someone who is like that, take some time to reflect, take some time to assess the way that you're carrying out your work, and try to see how you can do things a little bit differently by prioritizing those tasks that you really need to be involved in, and then seeing what can be delegated to the team. Empower your team to support you, because when they win, you win, and when you win, they win as well. So as a leader, have the mindset that you are collaborating with the people who report to you, and when everybody is on the same page, it will be beneficial to you as well. The third thing is unplug from work. This is a conversation that I had to have with so many of my clients, especially those who work remotely or hybrid. It comes up over and over again about not being able to stop looking at their emails once the workday is done, or not being able to disconnect from work because work is literally at home. You know, some of the strategies that over time I've shared with them are simple things like having a separate workspace in your house or your apartment. I know that's not possible for everyone depending on what kind of space you live in, but sometimes it's even a difference of knowing that this side of the table is where I work, this side of the table is where I eat. Even having that bit of a separation allows you to change your thoughts and to change your mind around this is work time, this is life and playtime, you know. But if you are able to have a separate space in your house where you get work done and then, you know, get the rest of the stuff done, that's separate in terms of a living room and in terms of a basement or anything like that, that is extremely beneficial to help you separate work time from the rest of your life. In addition to that, unplugging from work in terms of, especially for those who have a work phone and it's consistently with you, don't take it with you when you're going out on the weekend. Don't take it with you when you're going out in the evening. Really, when you need to have it during your work hours, do what is necessary. But unless there's an extreme emergency, there's no reason why you should be on your work phone constantly. So that's part of how you are able to set appropriate boundaries to help you unplug from work. The next thing that I truly believe is important is take time off. Take that paid time off. Take time to reset, to recharge. I recently just came back from vacation, and it's something that's quite important to me because I have noticed over time that, you know, I used to be one of those people who barely took any vacation days, always carrying forward days and days of vacation until, you know, now we're not even allowed to carry that many days ahead. But that was my style of operating. I was like, you know, I don't really need to take time off. Until I realized that taking time off is actually quite beneficial. I encourage other people to take time off, but I wasn't taking the time off myself. But then I've taken a couple of vacations over the last couple of years that were real vacations where I completely unplugged from work, and I saw the difference when I came back. I saw the difference in my team as well. When you're a leader and you're able to lead by example, you're showing the people that you lead that it's okay to take time off. You're showing the people that you lead that you do take time off to take care of yourself, or to just change your mindset, change your environment. Often something that has happened for me in my work, but also with my business in terms of taking time off, is that it's allowed me to come back with fresh ideas. And also it allows the team to get some time away from you, which also I've noticed is quite helpful because they are thinking, okay, what would Lisa want us to do next? And it also helps them come up with ideas in terms of, hey, this is how we can strategize to do things when you come back. And so for me, I think there is a huge win in taking that time off that is necessary to help you recharge. As I said, recently I just went on vacation. I was in Uganda and I also went to Kenya. And in all honesty, week one, I wasn't fully unplugged because I had a speaking engagement that week for International Women's Day. It was something that was really important to me that I really wanted to do. So I told myself, even if I'm away, I'm still going to do that speaking engagement. So I did do it, but I told myself that once that speaking engagement is done, I'm turning off the laptop, I'm turning off my phone, I'm not going to be constantly working. And even something that I've done maybe in the last 2 or 3 vacations that I took is that I don't even take my work laptop with me. This time was exceptional because of that speaking engagement. But once that speaking engagement was done, I still had 2 weeks on my vacation, and literally I uncharged, I unplugged. I really took the time to rest. I took the time to pray. I took the time to reconnect with family members that I hadn't seen in a long time. I took the time to really get centered and focus on what was important to me in the upcoming weeks, in the upcoming months. And it's been such a blessing. And I just feel so much more energized to get things done and get things done right. And so taking time off is helpful. So don't fear taking time off because of the repercussions in terms of, oh, I'm missing out on work. There are studies that support this, but what ends up happening is that when you keep going and thinking that you're just going to keep working without taking any time off or without taking a break, it leads to mental health issues or it leads to burnout that cost organizations and that cost individuals millions of dollars in the long run. So is it better for you to just take a couple of days or weeks off to recharge so you come back refreshed and bringing ideas that can generate money? Or is it better for you to keep going and to work at a minimal capacity because you're so tired and stressed, and in the long run having to take longer time off or sick leave that can cost even more money? So think about it. And sometimes it's all about reshaping your mindset about how you view certain things. And I've had this debate with many leaders in terms of taking time off and them feeling that they can't take the time off because if they take time off, things won't get done. You're just giving yourself too much credit. You're not that important. If something happens and they really need to replace you because you're not there, they will find someone to replace you. And that's just the reality of how business works. That's the reality of how work is. So don't give yourself too much credit. You are important, yes. You are valuable, yes. But if you value yourself so much, don't take yourself to the point that you're breaking down because of work. And the last thing when it comes to setting boundaries at work is don't be afraid to say no. 2-letter word, but it can be so difficult to say no in various situations. But it's something that you need to learn how to do. And it's something that you need to realize can make a big difference when it comes to your well-being and your mental health. I do have another video where I share practical ways that you can say no at work. So I am going to link that video right up and you'll be able to check that video out to get some practical tips about how to say no at work. But really, saying no is one of those ways that you can be able to protect the time that you have, to protect your energy, and to also ensure that you are productive and producing your best work in the time that you have allocated. In situations where it's necessary to say no, don't feel afraid to do so. And something that I have noticed over time is that people do respect you for saying no. It can seem sometimes a bit of a shock when you're maybe your first time that you're saying no, or it's the first time that you're saying I have other task I need to prioritize. I remember being in that position as a manager and seeing an employee trying to set boundaries and trying to learn how to say no. And I could tell they were so uncomfortable. But honestly, in that moment, I was like, good for you. Good for you for knowing your limits, knowing what you can take on, and being willing to express it and articulate that you have reached capacity and this is all you can take on. So I respected that as a leader, and I've noticed over time as well in situations where I have said no that it pinches, it hurts a little bit to the person you're saying no to, but in the long run they respect you for it because they will find another solution. You can suggest another solution, but at the end of the day, it means you are protecting yourself and your sanity, which is quite important. So go ahead, check out that video on how to say no at work, and you'll get practical strategies for you to be able to say no at work with confidence. I'll see you in that video.